All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to OneClass. My name is Kevin, and today I'm going to walk through some economics questions with you. A little bit of a background about myself. I hold both a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in economics, and I also work full-time as an economist. What I'm doing today is answering a couple questions that our junior tutors have gone through and answered. Adding anything else that I think might be relevant, and letting you know whether their answers are correct or incorrect. Most of these questions are kind of like early university level. There might be some to high school level and some a little harder than that. So I'm going to go in here. It's only, let me check if that's working. I think I only did 7 or 8 questions today. Shouldn't take the full hour. We'll see how she goes. Question 1. Suggest a policy or policy mix to achieve the following objectives. A, increase I while keeping Y constant. What happens to C, I, and G? And B, decrease T while keeping Y constant. What happens to C, I, and G? So our junior tutor has written that to achieve A, increasing I while keeping Y constant, and assuming an upward sloping LM curve and downward sloping IS curve. Just draw those for you. It's been a long time since I've gone over the ISLM model. So I'm just going to make sure I label the axes correctly. So Y for output is going to be on the x-axis, and I for the interest rate is going to be on the y-axis. Where they cross, it's going to be the equilibrium. I star is going to be the equilibrium interest rate. And Y star is going to be equilibrium output or GDP. So our junior tutor's written the answer to A is assuming the upward sloping LM curve and downward sloping IS curve, as we have here. In order to keep Y constant and increase I, we will need to use an expansionary fiscal policy along with a contractionary monetary policy. This will mean that there needs to be a cut in taxes, causing the IS curve to shift rightwards. So if there's a cut in taxes, IS is the investment savings curve. They'll have to pay less for taxes, so now they have more to invest and save. So it will shift to the right. We'll call this IS prime. Cuts in taxes causing the IS curve to shift rightwards, and a decrease in the money supply, which will cause the LM curve to shift leftwards. So we got our money supply decreasing. So close. Cause the LM curve to shift to the left. So there needs to be a cut in taxes, causing the IS curve to shift rightwards, and a decrease in the money supply, which will cause the LM curve to shift leftwards. It's going to keep Y unchanged and cause I to rise. So as we can see, our initial equilibrium was at this point here. And our new equilibrium after the expansionary fiscal policy and the contractionary monetary policy is going to be up here. So if we draw it down, Y star is going to be the same. However, the interest rate is now going to be I prime. It's going to be way up here. And down here we've got Y star is equal to Y prime. This is going to keep Y unchanged and cause I to rise as taxes fall. consumption will increase. As interest rates increase, investment will fall, and government spending can fall as taxes decrease. Perfect. So that's how to draw that one. We can move on now to part B. And part B, decrease taxes, T, while keeping Y constant. What happens to C, I, and G? So let me redraw the same graph. Output on the x-axis and interest rate on the y-axis. LM curve here. And our IS curve here. Decreasing T will mean that disposable income increases, and so the IS curve will shift rightwards. Sorry, I didn't label the equilibrium here. So where the LM curve crosses the IS curve, we've got Y star, equilibrium output, and I star, the equilibrium interest rate. So if we were to decrease T and keep Y constant, disposable income will increase and the IS curve will shift rightwards. Check that now. IS curve is going to shift to the right to what we're calling IS prime. This is effectively an expansionary fiscal policy that increases Y. Again, if we need to keep Y constant, there needs to be a contractionary monetary policy that causes the LM curve to shift leftwards and eliminate the output rise. As a result, consumption increases. Keep Y constant, I understand. So I'm effectively drawing the same graph over here, but the difference was in the way the expansionary fiscal policies were instituted. In the first one, the objective was increasing the interest rate. In this one, the decreased taxes was another way to achieve the same outcome. So Junior Tutor said to keep Y constant, there needs to be a contractionary monetary policy that causes the LM curve to shift leftwards and eliminates the output rise. As a result, consumption increases, investment falls as interest rates increase, and government expenditure will fall as tax revenues decrease. Give us a quick second to take a picture of that. And we can move on to question 2. And question 2 reads as follows. Explain how league-wide TV advertising is like a public good, while team-specific advertising is more like a private good. Explain using the 2 traits of a public good and provide an example. Using supply and demand curves, another example like we've done in class, demonstrating the friction between what is optimal for the league versus the incentives of individual teams. So if we remember a public good, public good has 2 main characteristics. 1, it is non-excludable. And 2, that it is non-rival. So non-rival means that one person's consumption of the good does not mean that there's less to consume for someone else. In the case of league-wide advertising, If I watch a commercial for the NBA, me consuming that commercial, watching it, does not impact your ability to consume it and watch it as well. Non-excludable means that you cannot exclude somebody else from watching it. So if I'm in my house and I watch that commercial, I can't stop you from watching it wherever you are. Of course, the good is rival. You can think like if there's some flowers that have grown and I walk by and I pick some of the flowers and take them with me, it's rival because there are now less flowers for others to consume. Similarly, if I owned a flower bed and you wanted to pick some flowers, I could exclude you from doing so because they are mine. They're a private good. So our junior tutor has said that league-wide advertising is like a public good because of its two features, non-exclusivity and no rivalry. Non-exclusivity means that it is impossible to exclude other individuals from consuming the good once it has been supplied. In this case, all teams would benefit from advertising once the TV advertisement is on the air. It's impossible to exclude a team. Whereas in the case of a specific team advertisement, only that team receives the benefit, and it is possible to exclude other teams as they do not pay for it. Non-rivalness means that consumption by one individual doesn't reduce the amount of good available to others. This holds true for a league-wide advertisement, as every team is represented in the advertisement. Also, just like any other public good, there will be a problem with free riding, as is the case of a league-wide advertisement, because not all teams will be willing to pay. And some teams can ride free of charge over the payment made to advertise by other teams. So again, going back to the NBA, maybe with the free rider problem, maybe the big name teams like the Lakers and the Knicks. Who am I kidding? The Knicks aren't a big name team. Maybe the big name teams like the Lakers, etc., will be willing to pay for advertisements because they've done the calculations and they know it's going to lead to more people watching their games, coming to their games, buying their merch, etc. But maybe teams like the Cleveland Cavaliers are not willing to pay for an NBA-wide advertisement because it's money coming into their pocket and no one is going to their games anyways. I know none of you are buying Colin Sexton jerseys, so I don't think I really have anything else to add. The main thing to remember with public-private goods is the remembering the definitions for non-excludable and non-rival, and then being able to determine whether or not the good at hand fits the description. So. Moving on to question 3. Explain why the Fed can always decrease the money supply, but cannot always increase the money supply. What are the implications for macroeconomic policymakers? And our junior tutor said a decreased money supply will increase the real interest rate. So even though a lower money supply may reduce output growth, its policy action can be taken. However, an increase in the money supply will reduce the real interest rate, but there's a lower limit of 0, where the nominal interest rate is equal to the inflation rate. But there's a lower limit of 0, where the nominal interest rate is equal to the inflation rate, below which the real interest rate cannot fall. If the Fed increases the money supply at a time when it will result in a negative real interest rate, policy is not feasible because a negative real interest rate will create a disincentive to save money. Therefore, the lower bound 0 acts as a constraint to increasing the money supply. This means that the economy will fall into a liquidity trap where the money supply is increased by a high amount, and therefore policymakers need to ensure that any increase in money supply does not keep the real interest rate near 0. So here we need to draw the money market graph. We've got the interest rate here and the quantity of money here. I will Google that and make sure that these axes are labeled correctly after. money demand and money supply should be a vertical line. Wow, close for sure. So we got the interest rate on the y-axis. Cool, I got it. So here, obviously, we're going to have, when it's at equilibrium, Q star, quantity supplied equals the quantity demanded of money. And we're going to have I star, which is the equilibrium nominal interest rate. So we can always decrease the money supply. Actually, let me make this bigger. I gotta redraw the graph. So again, bear with me. With the quantity of money on x-axis, nominal interest rate on the y-axis. We've got, say, money demand curve and our money supply curve. And of course, we've got our equilibrium interest rate and our equilibrium quantity. Now, what happens when we decrease the money supply? That means we move this line to the left and the interest rate goes up. There is no effective limit, although I'm sure there are some practical implications that act as a limit, but hypothetically, we can keep reducing the money supply, and the interest rate would keep rising and rising until, say, we reduce the money supply to 0 or something nonsensical like that. That won't happen. So the money supply can always be reduced because the interest rate can always go up. However, the money supply cannot always be increased because if we move it too far to the right, if we introduce too much money into the economy, call this MS prime, then we can reach a point where the money supply curve and money demand curve no longer intersect. So at this point here, the interest rate is already 0. And at this point, moving the money supply any further to the right has no further effect on the interest rate. So this point here is when we enter what is called a liquidity trap. Our junior tutor did an excellent explanation of this, so I'll go back over it in a second. So in case we'll call it, this means that the economy will fall into a liquidity trap when the money supply is increased by a high amount, and therefore policymakers need to ensure that any increase in money supply does not keep the real interest rate near 0. So again, once we move it too far to the right, once we increase the money supply too much, we reach a point where increasing it any further makes no changes to the interest rate, and we find ourselves in a liquidity trap. Moving on, question 4. Explain what is meant by the term mixed economy and what is alienation. According to Marx, what causes alienation? So a mixed economy is defined as an economy in which both the private sector and the state enterprises go hand in hand, from the ownership to the sharing of benefits. Both support each other to boost the overall economy. A mixed economy is different from a socialist economy in which every business is owned by the government, so there's no space left for private players. On the other hand, in a capitalist economy, every business is owned by private individuals. Sometimes, because of situations of monopoly, there's a crisis in the market. Low-income groups suffer. So a perfect blend between these two types of economies, known as the mixed economy, is needed. Government intervenes when there is a monopoly by the private sector, by providing subsidies, price support, etc. In practice, all economies are mixed economies. Some economies are much closer to socialism, maybe like Denmark. Some countries are much closer to capitalism. You can picture the United States, Canada. But to my knowledge, I don't think there's any truly socialist economy or truly capitalist economy, that being one in which every business is owned and operated by the government, and on the other end, one in which no business is owned and operated by the government. Also to add to that, so what is alienation? Theoretically, alienation is defined as isolation, the isolation of workers from their rights of ownership, the isolation of workers from their good working conditions, the isolation of workers from good health, the right to life, the right to freedom of speech, and the right to make decisions. Karl Marx's alienation is based on his analysis of alienated labor. Through the political economy, he sees the worker is degraded to the most wretched commodity, i.e. the misery of the workers increases with the power and size of their production. So according to him, the causes for the alienation are increase in goods production, devaluation of labor costs, fall in quality consumption of goods by laborers, the concept of unequal income, decrease in humanitarian behavior versus the rise in mechanisms, decrease in work satisfaction, or no work safety mechanisms such as state insurance, provider funds, etc. Truth be told, I don't know a thing about Karl Marx's theories on alienation. I'm sure there is a ton of reading as well as YouTube videos on it. So if it is something that interests you, I would encourage you to look into it a little bit further, but I don't really have anything else to add. I might just draw really quickly. Mixed economies are a spectrum. So on one end, we've got like socialism, everything government owned and operated. On the other, we've got like capitalism, where everything is privately owned and operated. And on the spectrum, we're going to have, like, I'd imagine the US is probably down here somewhere. You know, most developed nations are pretty capitalist. On the socialism, you know, we're probably going to have somewhere like, I believe Denmark is effectively socialist. China, etc. So what the gist of this is saying is that, like, all economies are mixed economies. But some will be closer to one end of the spectrum and others will be closer to the other end of the spectrum. Had that pop up, so I hope nothing is wrong with the stream. Keeps doing this with the recording, but it worked yesterday, so assume it's going to be fine. Question 5. Surrogates utility from soda S and hot dogs H. Her utility function is given by nothing from the looks of it. Here's income is $12, and the prices of sodas and hot dogs are $2 and $3 respectively. Into the following. A, calculate Sarah's marginal utility for soda and hot dogs respectively. B, write down Sarah's budget constraint equation. C, what is Sarah's utility maximizing bundle, sodas and hot dogs? Please answer and break it down step by step. My study guide and most likely on my test tomorrow. I truly have no clue how to solve this. I hope you sent in this question like earlier today. If not, I hope your test went well to whoever asked this. Unless the utility function is, oh, here we do have the utility function. So our utility function is going to equal S to the 1 over 2 soda, right, times H to the 1 over 2, which is hot dogs, I think. It's going to be subject to some budget constraint. So we've got subject to denote that S dot T. 12 times 2 times the quantity of sodas plus 3 times the quantity of hot dogs. I haven't done a question like this in quite a while, so bear with me. I believe I've set everything up right here. So part A is going to be calculate Sarah's marginal utility for soda and hot dogs respectively. We're going to have to partially derive, if I remember correctly. Let's see if our Janine The Tutor has done it the same. Yes, they have. Okay. So to get the marginal utility, you're going to take you're going to partially derive the utility with respect to whatever it is you're trying to get the partial utility of. So in this case, the marginal utility of soda, go to MUS, is going to equal the derivative of utility with respect to soda. That little backwards D is the partial derivative. So we're going to get 1/2 S to the negative 1/2 times H to the 1/2. That's going to equal H to the 1/2 over 2S to the 1/2. Unless my math skills have left me, which they might have. 0.5 times H times okay, yeah, so that is equivalent to 1/2 H over S to the power of 1/2. Not sure which form is going to be most advantageous to write it in, but all of these are equivalent. So that was the marginal utility of soda. Now we get the marginal utility of a hot dog. That's going to be the partial derivative of utility with respect to H for a hot dog. That's going to be 1/2 S to the 1/2 H to the negative 1/2. And that's going to be 1/2 S over H to the 1/2. I skipped that intermediate form I wrote in the first one. It turns out it's relevant. I'll go back and write it in here. just so this doesn't get confusing for anybody. So we've answered part A. We've calculated the marginal utility for both soda and hot dogs. So that's our marginal utility of soda. And this is our marginal utility of hot dogs. B, we need to write down our budget constraint equation. I mean, I've already done this. And yeah, so I already did this at the beginning here, so I'll do it again. Budget constraint, so she has an income of $12. And in situations like this, you assume she only consumes the two goods. So she has $12 to spend between sodas, which are, just to keep it consistent, I'll see how our junior tutor. So $2 to spend on sodas and $3 to spend on hot dogs. So that is our budget constraint. 12 equals 2S plus 3H, where S is the quantity of soda she buys, and H is the quantity of hot dogs she buys. Part C, what is Sarah's utility maximizing bundle of sodas and hot dogs? I think I typically use the Lagrange method when I was doing questions like these, but I will follow through with the way our junior tutors does it. They should arrive at the same answer regardless. So they've got, and from my memory, this is correct, multiple or marginal utility soda over the S is going to be equal to the marginal utility of hot dogs over pH. So that's just this term, MUS, is going to be 1 over 2 brackets H over S to the 1/2 PS is 2 over 2 equal 1/2 S over H to the power of 1/2 over 3. Just going to shrink this. I'm actually going to give you guys a quick second to take a picture of the top if need be before it gets too much smaller. We can start canceling things out. Goes on both sides. We're going to get 3 H over S to the 1/2 equal 2 S over H to the 1/2, and that's going to equal, work out to 3H, it's going to equal 2S. If we now plug this back into our budget equation, we've got 12, it's going to equal 2S plus 3H, we know is equal to 2S, so 2S plus 2S. $12 is then going to equal 4S. And S star, our optimum level of soda, is going to equal 12 over 4, which is 3. Knowing that, we go back to our budget equation, saying 12 is going to equal 2 times 3 plus 3h. H is then going to equal 6, and h star is going to equal 2. So our utility maximizing amount of soda is 3. Our utility maximizing amount of hot dogs is 2. And Junior Tutor has the same answer. So way to do these questions, you're always going to want to write out your utility function. You're going to write out what it's subject to. You're going to take the marginal utility. So you are going to derive your original utility function, partially derive your original utility function with respect to each of the goods. I write down the budget constraint equation at the beginning, but you can write it down after if you want. Here you guys can look into the Lagrange multiplier method if that works easier for you. That's what I learned, and I believe it's the preferred way to go about this, but I might be horribly outdated, who knows. So from there, you would use the Lagrange multiplier, or in this case, you can say the marginal utility over the price of one is going to equal the marginal utility over the price of the other. And there you should be able to isolate for the optimal amount of the two goods. Let's hope I was here in time. All right. Second last question here, I believe, maybe the last one. Profit maximization and competitive supply. Probably not going to do all these questions, but we'll see. 1, explain why an individual firm can be a price taker, even though the entire market demand for its product may be downward sloping. Our Junior Tutor, I said that market demand and supply determine equilibrium price and quantity, which is passed on to every firm, who then sells the product at that price. Every consumer is aware of this price, and therefore not even a single consumer can charge a higher price. So I always, when talking about perfect competition, think about like mushrooms in a grocery store. If you go to the grocery store, you're going to cook with mushrooms at night. You probably don't think there's a big difference in quality between any of the mushrooms available at the grocery store. And as a result, they're probably all priced pretty well exactly the same. If a new company tries to come in and sell their mushrooms at a much higher price than the rest of the mushrooms, nobody's going to buy them because they're just mushrooms. They're all pretty much the same. And you're not going to be able to undercut the market or earn more profits than the rest of the market can. 2, not undercut the market. Why is the assumption of profit maximization sometimes referred to as marginal behavior? Junior Tutor said 2. Profit is maximized where marginal revenue is the same as marginal cost and is therefore referred to as marginal behavior. One thing my profs really drilled into my head in undergrad is that economists always think of the margins. What is the effect of adding one more unit or taking away a unit? And yeah. 3, in the long run equilibrium, all firms in the industry earn 0 economic profit. Why is this true? Tutor said that in the long run, there is no entry or exit of firms. Price is the same as average and marginal revenue and is equal to the minimum average long-term cost, which is the minimum efficiency point. I will draw this for us real quick. Price takers, that's hideous, I apologize. In the market is price takers, so P is flat. Marginal cost slopes upwards. And the average cost is kind of U-shaped. So the point where all 3 meet is going to be our long run equilibrium. Just going to supply our Q star. And our P star is going to be, of course, the price that all have to take. So in the long run, there is no entry or exit of firms. Price is the same as average and marginal revenue and is equal to the minimum average long-term cost, which is the minimum efficiency point. Profits equal total revenue minus total cost, which is the same in the long run, and hence 0 profits. 4, why would a firm say in an industry that only promised 0 long-run profits? Janine The Tutor said that 0 profit includes the profit of the entrepreneur and cost reduction, and also guarantees no loss. As a result, the firm stays in business. Don't have much else to add to that one. I think that's a good foundational question. And if you're interested in learning more, I would look into perfect competition. I think this is the last question. What is meant by price elasticity demand? Listen and explain 3 factors of price elasticity demand. So the elasticity demand formula is going to be the percentage change in quantity demanded over the percentage change in price. And basically what the elasticity demand is how consumers react to a change in price. So there's 3 kind of scenarios here. So the elasticity demand can be greater than 1. That means the good is going to be elastic. And if you think about it, that means that the numerator is going to be bigger than the denominator if the absolute value is greater than 1. So it must be that when there's a price change, there's a large swing in the quantity demanded. If it's equal to 1, we call it unit elastic. That means that the numerator is equal to the denominator. So when there's a price change, there's a proportional change in the quantity demanded of that good. And lastly, if the elasticity demand is less than 1, we call it inelastic. And that means the numerator is smaller than the denominator. So when there's a change in price, there is a smaller change in the quantity demanded. So A says, list and explain 3 factors of price elasticity of demand. Our junior tutor has written that the price elasticity of demand is the responsiveness of the consumer's demand for a product when its price changes. The magnitude of responsiveness can be estimated as the percentage change in quantity required by the percentage change in price. The few factors including price elasticity of demand are availability of substitutes for the product, nature of the product under consideration, whether the product is a luxury or a necessity to consumers, the amount of time over which the changes in price take place, and or time consumers get to alter the pattern of consumption. So my favorite example here is whether or not the good is a necessity or a luxury. Necessities tend to be inelastic. For example, if you went to the grocery store and everything was doubled in price, you still need to eat, so your quantity demanded of food probably wouldn't change all that much. However, I'm trying to think of a good one. Oh, well, the PS5 just came out, so maybe now there's been a price drop in PS4s, and as a result, the quantity demanded for PS4s has gone up a lot because they're now substantially cheaper. I don't know if it's true, but I'm just making it up. Goods like this, luxuries, things that you don't really need. Shut off my escape key, solid. Things you don't really need tend to be elastic. So another example is like, I don't know, some new video game comes out and I think prices are like $70 or $80 a game normally. Maybe like this game is priced at like $150. Or the price moves from $80 to $150, the demand is probably going to go way down because it's a luxury and you really don't need that game. It's just a nice thing to have. Part B, why managers are interested in the concept of price elasticity of demand. Our junior tutor said the concept of price elasticity is interesting to a manager since it reflects by how much the quantity demanded changes as price varies. In turn, it will give the manager an idea with the magnitude of price increase and or decrease required to attain a particular level of sales, total revenue. When demand is elastic, a price reduction leads to a more than proportionate increase in the quantity demanded, leading to an increase in total revenue. On the other hand, when the demand is inelastic, a decrease in price leads to a less than proportionate increase in quantity demanded, leading to a decrease in total revenue. Well, in the case of unitary elastic demand, an increase in price leads to a proportionate change in quantity required to maintain the total revenue as before. In addition, for a monopolistic firm, it's the elasticity of demand that determines the amount of markup the monopolist can charge over and above the marginal cost of production. So those examples I gave you a minute ago were from the consumer's point of view. I think our junior tutor here did an excellent job describing how they instead look from the firm's point of view. I will leave this here for a brief second in case anybody wants to take a picture of it. We can carry on. C. Why are managers interested in the concept of consumer surplus? Junior tutor has written that consumer surplus reflects the difference between a consumer's maximum willingness to pay for the good and the price she or he actually pays for it. Therefore, if the manager can access information about consumer surplus, which in turn would reflect a consumer's maximum willingness to pay, the manager can pursue a policy of first-degree price discrimination. In this case, prices paid by each individual will be equal to his or her maximum willingness to pay for the good. Pursue a price policy such that a major share of consumer surplus is captured by the manager with a diminution in demand. So if I draw really quickly our typical just supply and demand graph, Q and P, and we've got demand sloping down. In first degree price discrimination, although nearly impossible to practice, they would charge, we know that when looking at this demand curve, when the price is, say, 10, there are no people demanding it. But when the price is 9, we've got one person demanding it. When the price is 5, we've got 5 people demanding it. And when the price is 1, we've got 9 people demanding it. So everything under the demand curve here in perfect price discrimination is going to be consumer surplus. So they will charge each consumer their maximum willingness to pay. So the one person that would pay $9 for it, they will charge that person $9. The 2 people that would be willing to pay $8 for it will be charged $8 for it. And they will do that all the way down the demand curve, and that's to extract all of the consumer surplus and maximize their profits, with everything here being consumer surplus. Yeah, it was a very good write-up by our junior tutor there. I think that's it. Looks like it is. Thanks for watching the stream tonight. If you have any questions yourself, there should be a link below the video. You can follow the link. You should be able to ask some questions. Should be streaming again this week. So hopefully I can answer them soon. Take this video, you can share it with your friends. I think, yeah, you guys all know how to do that. I'm off to watch the NBA draft. This has been Kevin from OneClass. Thank you for watching.